This is episode 105 of The Variety Artist. This is John Abrams, your host, and that guy that interviews successful variety artists from around the world every single week. We all need a laugh. This interview is with an entertainer that thinks way out of the box. We talk about crazy hats, chickens, skunks, exploding toilets, and so much more. I didn't want it to end. You're going to have so much fun. I definitely did. Oh, by the way, right after the show, make sure to rate and review the podcast. It really helps a lot. Just take a minute to hit those stars, and if you have more than a minute, leave a nice review. I'll remind you again at the end of the interview. Now on with the show.
Welcome to The Variety Artist, providing aspiring artists and entertainers with in-depth discussions from top performers from all over the world. So get ready to book some gigs, make some money, and have some fun with your host, John Abrams.
Maclean's magazine says, for those in search of a truly zany, the undisputed king is Al Simmons, a popular, wildly original performer. And Variety magazine says, you'll be consumed with laughter when Al Simmons lets his zany comedy loose. Variety artist, I give you award-winning variety artist Al Simmons.
It's me.
No, that was great. That wasn't me. That was Al doing that. I think you're my first musical introduction.
Oh, cool. Okay, I'll just give my orchestra a break now. You fellas take a little bit of time off here. Okay, they'll come back maybe the end.
You have a whole room full of people there now?
Yeah, the orchestras, they're all taking a break now.
Well, now for people who haven't seen you, what does your act look like? I mean, we got a teeny bit of a taste right there.
Well, it's always a challenge to try and explain what it is I do. People that have seen me have trouble too. They just say wacky, zany, all of those things, that people lay on. The general public or reviewers that first started calling me a vaudevillian or a new age vaudevillian or bringing back the past and stuff like that. It's basically just good, clean fun for everybody. I'm a bit of an inventor. When I'm at home, I build crazy instruments and props and hats and costumes. That's my hobby, and my job is traveling the world, making people laugh with show and tell, showing my crazy stuff off.
You make your own props, is that right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So when you make a prop, are you thinking specifically about a routine, or are you just making a prop just for fun?
Well, more often than not, I get an idea and I'm obsessed with it until I build it. I have no concept of what the end result is going to be with it. I usually shoehorn it into my show. I find a way to put it into the show. But I've got stuff at home here that I've been on stage once and failed, and I just have it here for me, for my entertainment.
For people who can't see your props, because this is audio, we're probably...
Describe some for me now, Al. Oh,
exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Well, my challenge is when I build stuff over the years, I've realized I've got to make it small and light and portable and durable so that I can tour with it. And in the past, I've made some big things that are very hard to tour. And one of the things I used to travel with, it's a bicycle horse or a horse bicycle. When I was young, I used to ride my bike around Winnipeg. Mm-hmm. On Saturday afternoons, I'd watch horse opera, which was, I guess, it was a take on soap operas during the week, and on the weekend they would have a cowboy show. And I think it must have been for 2 hours. They would play a cowboy movie. I would just love it watching that. And then after it was over, I'd get on my bicycle and ride it around town, imagining that I was on horseback. Mm-hmm. So this idea all sort of came to me at once to make a bicycle with off-center wheels so that when you ride it, it's going up and down like a horse, which I've seen before. Lots of clowns do that. Like they'll make a off-center bike. It just looks weird. And then you can have the front going up and the back going down, and it's just a fun ride. I decided that I could also have the chain mechanism drive clip clops. So while I'm riding it, it's going. I built a head and a behind for it. If I put a cam wheel on the bum part of the behind, it'll go up and down opposite to the way the wheels are going.
Sure.
When I'm riding. And then the head too is connected with a string to another gear mechanism that pulls the head up and down. And the eyes blink, the mouth opens and closes, and the tail twirls. And it's just so much fun to ride. And then when I built that, I thought, well, now what am I going to do with it? So I wrote a song to go along with it, and built a cowboy costume with chaps, and I built a fixed gun, like a cowboy gun. But it was just a plastic one, and I put a harmonica on the end of it. I'd play harmonica in the middle of the song. I'd play a little solo, and then I'd say, oh, there I go, shooting my mouth off again.
Yeah.
Well, times have changed.
Yeah, a little bit. You can't carry a gun. I used to do a lot of murder mysteries, and one of the murder mysteries, you'd go into a restaurant, and you'd have regular folks there, and then a bunch of actors would come in and do the murder mystery. And it used to be we'd be able to bring a gun in and shoot the other actor,
shoot a blank,
and the other actor would die. You can't do that now.
All the fun stuff's taken away.
Yeah.
No, thank goodness, in a lot of ways. When I would say that line, there I go shooting my mouth off again, I had a good friend who taught rifle safety. He said, even a toy gun, any gun, you never pointed at anybody. They didn't tell us that when we were kids and playing cops and robbers in the backyards. But I was actually doing the show in San Diego. I used to ship that huge bicycle around. It would travel by truck.
Wow.
I'd have to get it across the border, and it was fun to have it there. But anyway, I got to that point in the show where I pulled the gun out and was going to play the harmonica, and a little girl at the back of the tent screamed, "He's got a gun," and ran out of the tent screaming. And that was it. That's the last time I put it away. I thought,
oh yeah,
it wasn't even funny. It was borderline clever, if that. So I just put it away and just thought up other gags to do. But
yeah, there's so many other things going on in that routine that.
Oh yeah, there's so much. And I built an expanding cowboy hat. Here I am talking about one of my gags, but that's how it came about. I thought of the idea of making that bicycle horse, and then I just had to find a way to use it on stage. And in order to use it on stage, I wrote a song and then built a costume. And the hat, I wanted to say I've got a 10-gallon hat, but have it actually expand from being a 10-gallon hat to being a 60-gallon hat.
Okay.
I tried everything. I tried a springs. I tried foam rubber, bungee cords. I tried everything to do it. What I ended up doing was I had a real cowboy hat, and I fiberglassed the top part of it, and then it became solid, and I was able to mount a volleyball to the top of it, and then covered the whole thing with stretchy white bathing suit material.
Yeah.
So I'd blow my thumb, but I'm actually blowing into a tube, and the tube is connected to that volleyball. And when it expands, you can't see that it's a volleyball. It just looks like the hat is growing.
Oh.
It's an astounding effect. And it's so simple, but it took me a couple of weeks of experimentation. That bicycle horse took me close to a year to build. I would work until I had every tool in my workshop, almost every tool out on the workbench, and I'd reach a problem, and I'd say, I can't figure out how to get the clip clops to go. So then I'd say, okay, that's it, and I'd tidy up, put everything away, tidy up, sweep the shop, go to bed, wake up in the morning, bing, I know how to do it, and then go back at it until every tool was out again, and then say, I don't know how to do this, and clean up again. And get back to it. That's something my father-in-law taught me. Like if you reach a problem, just stop, and then your brain will continue to work on it.
I use the same strategy. I'll try to do something if I'm putting together a show or a routine. I'll make sure that I do it 3 or 4 days before I need the routine done, because I know that first day I'm going to get stuck somewhere. And once I get stuck, if I go to bed, I wake up the next morning and like you just said, ding, all of a sudden you have an idea of how you can make that routine work.
That's a writer's trick too that I'm trying to think of his name, Stephen King.
Mm-hmm.
I think I heard him talking about it. And he said what he does is he'll write a story until he gets to a point where he's not sure what to do. And he'll put it away for a long enough time that he forgets about it.
Mm.
And then he'll come back to it, months later, even a year later, and read it and say, "This is brilliant."
Who wrote this?
This is unbelievable. I couldn't have possibly have done this. And then I know what the ending is. Here's the ending. And then it's done. A lot of times that's the way to do, just walk away. But that routine now, for the folks listening to this, that's one that you can actually go see. I made a music video of it, and it's on my YouTube channel, which is Al Simmons Entertainer. You can find it on YouTube, Al Simmons Entertainer. And the song is called "I've Got a Horse."
Can I put that on your show notes page? Can I put a link to that?
Yeah, we can put a link to it.
That's what I'll do.
That was my lesson learned. That was a lot of work building that, and then to truck it all over North America. But I shipped a bunch of big stuff to my show in Singapore. While I was doing my show in Singapore, all my big props were at the airport in Bombay.
Mm-hmm.
They never even made it to the show.
That's something I would be worried about, because as a magician, I'm a magician. If I were to show up in another country and not have certain things, I could put something on Facebook and get some rings and some sponge balls and some standard magician things, and I can still do my show. Whereas if your galloping horse that you worked on for a year doesn't show up, what do you do then?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Now I remember I was in Australia, and I was performing to 60,000 people. The fellow that booked me for that never hired me again. I scrambled. It's not that I have a not me worry attitude, but I just think, here's the predicament. What's the solution? I just scrambled around town and found stuff, made up an act. It was fun. Anybody that had never seen me before wouldn't have known, but boy, the fellow that booked me, I have a bathtub that I wear around my waist. That was another big one that I travel with. I can walk around wearing a bathtub with a working shower head that looks like it's hooked up to the city waterworks and squirts me with water. And I have a ukulele that I play the song with. It's got a scrub brush on the back. I scrub my back, and there's bare legs. It looks like my legs in the bathtub. Uh-huh. They're made out of nylon stockings. It looks like studs and a rubber ducky, and it's such a fun act. And then when I scrub my back with the scrub brush and pull the lever, the water squirts me, and then I dry myself off with a towel and paddle away with the ukulele.
That's crazy.
Off the scene, but that didn't show up.
Oh man.
So anyway, my lesson was to build stuff that's small and portable. Now I can tour with one suitcase full of small props and you know what it's like. Anybody listening to this that's a performer knows you can do a 1 hour or 2 hour show with a suitcase full of props. Any props comedian knows that. You can do 2 hours with one suitcase full, but you can do a gangbuster 1 hour show with 6 cases of props.
That's true.
The audience wouldn't know. Well, they'll know. Look at that huge stuff he's using. I've got props that it's like 4 minutes in the act, and it's one 80-pound case.
Yeah.
how does that make sense?
But then you probably also have a 10-minute routine with just a small hat. Huh.
Yeah, I went into a daycare and somebody said, "Hey, this is Al Simmons. He's an entertainer. Do something for us, Al." Well, I did 45 minutes with a harmonica.
There you go.
They loved me,
I'm sure they did.
but they were all under 4 years old.
So what kind of props are you making now that are smaller, that are travelable?
Well, my main ones, I'm tall, like I'm 6'3" when I'm feeling good, but if I'm slouching, I'm 6 foot. But if I'm in a good mood, I'm 6'2". So my head is, I don't even have to be on stage. So I wear hats. I build crazy hats.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to really be a good way to show off props, is to build it and put it on my head and have it do something stupid.
And there it is, displayed at 6'2".
Yeah, and I built a bunch of wacky shoes in my past, but it's not as easy to show them off.
What kind of hats do you have?
Well, I'm trying to think of what were the first ones. The first show that I did, I was singing in a rock band in around 1970. I just sang straight songs off the hit parade with a band, and the audience absolutely hated me. They despised me. The requests I got, couldn't even say in public. I had shows the next week, and I took a box. My dad was a bit of a collector, and he had a bunch of hats, cowboy hats, engineers' hats, women's hats, all sorts of hats. I took a box of his hats, and every time I sang a song, I put on a different hat and acted out the lyrics. All of a sudden, I'm a hit.
Oh.
Because the hat turned me into somebody else, and I was able to act out the songs.
Mm-hmm.
The lyrics to the rock songs, they're ludicrous a lot of times, and when you're singing them and you look cool and the band is great, it sounds cool. But if you're an uncool guy like me singing them, it looks ridiculous. But if I put a hat on and act the stupid lyrics out, then all of a sudden it's funny.
It's ridiculous but appropriate.
Yeah. So anyway, that's where it began. But I'm sort of describing them so that if anybody wants to attempt to make them, they can. One popular one. I put 3 bicycle spokes on a motor like that inside the construction worker's hard hat. I've got 3 socks hanging off the end of it. So when they go back and forth, they're flopping around like crazy. I initially put ping pong balls because I wanted to keep it light.
Mm-hmm.
But the ping pong balls, you could hardly see the motion. So then I thought, oh, darn it, this thing is not going to work. And then I put ribbons hanging, and they went eccentric. So then I thought, okay, that's it. So I put socks, because socks are funny. Ping pong balls aren't funny. Ribbons aren't funny. Anvils are funny.
That would hurt your head.
That's heavy. So socks are better. So I put socks on there, and then I found a way to have another extended bicycle spoke drive a crazy sock that's sitting on top where the actual motor is. The motor is on the outside of the hat.
Mm-hmm.
And I've covered the motor on the outside of the hat with a sock. Inside that sock is another bicycle spoke that's attached to the mechanism that makes it go wacky. But anyway, and then I thought, well, now I made that. What do I do with this on stage? So I had to make up a poem to go with it, and then an entire song to go along with it too. Now, how I built this hat is very strange and funny. I'm always trying to find, I can't think of the poem, some ways to save my money.
That's okay.
Isn't that something? That is the craziest thing. When you take, it's a poem, like I say it all the time.
Yeah.
You know, right now we're in the middle of this COVID-19 lockup where we're all locked down and all gigs are canceled for.
Yeah.
When I get back on stage, is it going to be 2 months, 2 years? We don't know how long we're going to be locked down. How long are stuff going to be canceled? When I finally get back on stage in 6 years, I'm not going to be able to do this.
Yeah,
Or
you
maybe
will.
it'll be like, it might be like Stephen King, where it's like taking the story out of the drawer and say, this is brilliant.
Yeah, you're going to say, who invented this hat? What an amazing hat this is.
So anyway, I've got a bunch of my crazy hats, and they're on my YouTube channel too, and you can watch
Yeah, I'll take a look at.
and you get the real words to that thing. And I better watch it myself, I'm afraid. That's one of them, and that is probably the most complex. I've got plenty of others, and I just wanted to experiment with spring hinges. Sometimes they're used on a gate, to keep a gate closed.
Yeah, sure.
Slam shut, or a door, or a kitchen cupboard, or even a small little jewelry box or something. So there's big hinges, small hinges. It was just an experiment. I found a aluminum cooking pot that was 7 3/8 my hat size, which is fantastic. Like,
Yeah.
you can, not all stores give hat sizes with their cooking pots, but this was in my kid's sandbox. So I went and scooped it, put it on my head, and I thought, okay, that's perfect for mounting this stuff on, because I knew I needed a solid base. I drew pictures, like full-scale drawings of how I was going to lay it out and put the springs in place. It's important to plan everything out beforehand. So then this took me 3 days to build. The first day I planned it out on paper. The next day I built it exactly like I planned it on paper. And then the third day I rebuilt it because it didn't work out anything like I had planned.
Of course.
It starts off just looking like I've got a cooking pot on my head with some kind of a cooking apparatus underneath, on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
That looks like I might have the stove, like a little mini stove. But when I push a string out of the way, it pops open to be, it's about 2 foot by 3 foot tall. It looks like everything that was in the kitchen drawer.
Wow.
It is now on my head.
And it just pops out?
Yeah. And then, yeah, it just goes, it's like I could hurt somebody with it. But, 13 spring hinges in there.
Wow.
That might be a world record for a hat.
Oh, you should call up Guinness and say, I have the world record for a spring-loaded hat. They'll probably accept it.
Yeah. Who else has done it?
Exactly. Now, we've been talking a lot about your props, different props for your shows. I understand that your house is booby-trapped. Not booby-trapped, but it has a lot of things in your yard and things. What is your house and yard like?
Well, we live in the country outside of Winnipeg in the bush. I was going to say, when my wife and I had, we have 3 sons. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. But it started before the boys came along. I visited a fellow in Minnesota, and he had built stuff out of barrels and springs from washing machines, and like he was quite an eccentric, and he had all these things in his yard. So I took measurements and came home and built them for myself. A big barrel that you can sit on and ride like riding a bull,
Mm-hmm.
and it's on a massive truck spring. So when you lean forward, you go forward, and you're almost going to fall off. You have to hold on for dear life, and when you correct yourself, you end up going too far back or too far to the side. It's a real challenge. It uses your core muscles to keep you in place.
Yeah.
Built other things, and they were in swings, and it was just my wife and I here. And then when our boys came along, all of a sudden they got involved and said, we want to do this. So we have Tarzan ropes, zip lines, and I built a huge hill for a toboggan slide and fire pole in the house.
Oh.
A room that I always wanted is a room filled with pillows and lined with mattresses. So you can go in there. No one gets hurt.
So going to your house is like going to a kind of a obstacle course amusement park, huh?
Yeah. It's a fun house. Why not have fun?
So you get off stage, you've been doing all these crazy hat things, you get home, you're on Tarzan ropes, you're zip lining. You're like a big giant little kid, huh?
I'm now 71 years old, and I still feel like I'm 7 years old in a lot of ways. Why grow up?
Yeah, exactly.
I now meet people that I worked for, theater managers or bar owners or the like, just people that from my past that I thought, oh, I'm frightened of them. They're authoritarian figures. They're the boss. They're charge, and I'm just a minion. I'm just, I'm a nobody there. And I meet them now and realize, my gosh, these people are 20 years younger than me. I'm old. All this time I thought they were older, more mature than me, but they have a different set of brain cells than I do.
Yeah.
They have business acumen that I'm lacking.
Well, I don't know if you're lacking it or not, but you've kept the fun gene.
Yeah. Who needs money when you can have fun?
That's right. Now, I read that you had a fire in or on your house. How did that happen?
Well, this was 2 years ago. The building, I stored all of my props and costumes in a train car.
Hmm.
It was ideal for storage. I had shelves and everything was stored in there. But the thing with a bunk car is they're very flammable.
Hmm.
It wasn't till after that I figured this is what happened. There was a bunny that I noticed that was living underneath. So whenever I would clear the snow, I'd make sure I'd clear the opening to its little home underneath the train car. After the fire, I found wires when they were tearing the building apart. I found wires that were chewed by a bunny, by something. They were chewed right through the bare wire. That might have been that little bunny. I hate to blame the bunny. I'm sure it got out okay, but
Oh, no.
my wife and I were home. I was playing with my granddaughter in the pillow room, and my wife yelled out, "The train car is on fire!" And I looked out the window, and I don't know why I didn't see it myself, but it was fully engulfed in flames. My wife ran out, and I immediately stayed to keep my granddaughter calm and called her mom to come over, and then ran out, went in. I knew where some things were. It was flames and smoke. I knew where the bicycle horse was, and I went in and grabbed it. I'd never been able to lift it alone, but I did it that day. I grabbed it and pulled it out and grabbed the case that it normally lived in, and all the parts were in there, pulled it out, and then grabbed 3 or 4 other cases. The last thing I did was grab an armful of costumes and brought them out, and I dropped them on top of a open case of props and realized they were on fire. They were destroyed, and whatever was in that case was destroyed too because of that. And then my neighbor threw snow on me, and because I was on fire, and he said, "You're not going in there again. I won't let you."
Yeah.
The rest went.
So all of your props and your costumes and your house and the whole thing?
Everything, not the house, our house wasn't, but the building storing all the props was, and all the props that I built over my 50-year career were gone, except for a couple of cases that I saved. I had trouble sleeping for 2 weeks,
I would think so.
thinking of all the things all the memorabilia, everything that was lost. And a friend of mine kept asking if she could put up a GoFundMe page. And I said, I told her I don't want to be known as the guy whose props burned up.
Yeah.
I would rather keep this a secret, and I'll just rebuild. And then Barb and I, my wife and I, took stock and realized that we were done. Bankruptcy, or worse, was the only option. We were done. The insurance doesn't know what to make of a ethafoam bathtub, and
Right.
some of the things they've no concept of what that is, and so they wouldn't insure it. And
Well, not only that, but how do you put a value on something that you worked on for a year?
yeah, some of the stuff is, it's made out of stuff I found. So the material value is like 35 cents, but the labor and the knowledge that went into making it. Anyway, my son said to me, "You're not going to be known as the guy who lost everything in a fire. You're going to be known as the guy who came back stronger than ever out of it."
Mm.
Just him saying that was such an inspiration to me that I called my friend and I said, "Go ahead." And she did, and they raised money. I was fortunate enough that I had no work for 3 months. I was worried about it for months prior. I thought, oh no, I've got 3 months of no shows.
Mm.
And the fire happened during the first week of that time off. So I had 3 months to get a show up and running, and I contacted all the people that had hired me. And I said, "I don't know what you've heard, but I'm going to be good to go. Somehow I'll do it."
Mm-hmm.
And Barb and I worked day and night for months rebuilding enough to get me up and rolling.
Mm.
Rebuilt props and built new stuff. She made costumes for me. And the very day after the fire, I had a fundraiser of freebie that I was doing for some folks. While the firefighters were there putting the last of the fire out, I was in my shop, which was a separate building, repairing the props that I had pulled out, cutting off pieces of costume that were burnt.
Mm-hmm.
I did the show the next day.
Oh.
I put hats on my head, and ashes were falling out, and I was inhaling ashes from the fire, and tears were rolling down my face while I was performing. And I had to perform with my one side facing the audience and the other side away from them because the costume didn't exist on the other side. It was burnt.
Oh no.
And a fellow came up to me after the show and said, "Al Simmons, I've heard about you for years. This is my first time ever seeing you. That's the funniest thing I ever saw in my life."
That's great.
And I thought, okay, that's it. Barb and I continued from there. We just never stopped.
Yeah, there's so many lessons in that story, especially at this time with the COVID-19 thing. A lot of us don't have work for a month or a month and a half, 2 months, 3 months. And instead of sitting around feeling sorry for yourself and feeling sorry that you don't have gigs, it's best to get up, dust yourself off, create new routines, work on the old routines that you have, take advantage of that time. In fact, I had on my podcast maybe about a year ago, somebody named an agent named Jerry Goldstein. She's a terrific agent. She suggests that when you have downtime to actually put on your calendar, schedule on your calendar things that you can do other than performing, like working on routines, making phone calls, doing these things when you have downtime. So there's so many lessons in the things that you did. So that way, when you're back on your feet, you come out smelling like a rose.
Boy, that is a brilliant idea. My wife does that. She makes a list and writes stuff down. I'm more wake up in the morning and say, "I think I'll do this, maybe, but maybe not. Maybe I'll do this." She's much more organized than I am. I'm learning from her all the time, and I'll make a list and then I'll lose the list. And I think that that's a brilliant idea that person came up with, is actually writing it down. My wife has on her calendar things she wants to get done. I think I'll take that advice.
Yeah,
Stuff always takes longer than you expect to do, but
of course.
there's a saying a good friend of mine said, here it is: "He who has begun is halfway there. Be wise, begin." That's it, That all you have to do is begin.
Yeah, that is one of the toughest things is to start a project. And I'm one of those crazy people that once I start something, I have to finish it. It's just the way it is, whether it's a routine,
Yeah.
whether it's good or whether it's bad, whatever it is, I have to be done with it at some point in time and go, okay, well, I'm done with that. Thank you.
Yeah, but if you don't start it, then it just sits in your head. And
All right, we're going to switch gears a little bit here, Al.
let's switch gears. I like making soup. There's something.
Yeah, how's that soup going? We're going to do a fact or something John just made up. That sound like fun?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's what's going to happen. I'm going to give you a headline. You tell me whether it's true or not. And if it is true, tell me a little more about it. How does that sound?
That's a lie.
Eh.
Oh, that wasn't the first one?
No, that wasn't it.
Okay.
All right, here we go.
I'm ready.
Wait, do you have some music for this? Do you have like an intro for this?
Okay, yeah.
I have one, but do you have one handy?
Oh, yeah, here we go.
Okay.
Here we go.
Perfect. All right, first headline. Al once had a pet chicken.
Yes,
You had a pet chicken?
I did.
Tell me about that.
My aunt and uncle, Aunt Georgie and Uncle Russ, were amazing aunts and uncles. They were so much fun. I learned more about comic timing playing a game of Go Fish with my Aunt Georgie than from any comedian. We were downtown passing by a florist shop in the spring, and they had little yellow chicks in the window.
Hmm.
My sister and I, we were, I was probably 3 and she was 5, and we both said, "Oh, aren't they cute?"
Yeah.
So they went in and bought one for us.
Oh,
I'm sure they just gave them away. So we brought it home as a little chick. Well, it didn't take long till it turned into a chicken.
yeah, chicks do that.
Yeah, and then the end result is something that I didn't hear about until years later. Like, they were cute and fun to play with, but when it was a full-grown chicken, it was suddenly no fun anymore. My mom told me the horror story, what happened after. We were all away, and my dad and Uncle Russ took the chicken into the bathroom.
Oh,
Oh, my mom said, "Oh, the mess. Oh, the blood. Oh, a horror show."
what a lovely story.
Of course, my sister and I came home, and unbeknownst to us, we ate the chicken. It's enough to make you want to be a vegan. I'm glad I didn't find out till I was in my 30s.
That is enough to change you. Now, this is something you and I both have in common, because I do magic with live animals. And one time I had a brilliant idea to do magic with a chicken. I thought, I'll do magic with a chicken. So I went and bought a silky chicken, and silky chickens are really funky looking. They're kind of long and thin, and they have black skin, and this one that I had white feathers. So, and it had crazy head. And I decided I'm going to do this magic with a chicken. So I create an illusion for it. I'm in the middle of my show, and I've done this trick, I don't know, 10, 15 times. And so I'm in the middle of my show, and suddenly I hear from behind my case where nothing's visible, I hear this.
What?
And I was like, oh no, it's not a chicken. It's a rooster. So I made it appear quickly, and that was the last time I ever used it, because having a rooster is illegal where I lived there.
Oh, is that right?
Because they crow.
Oh,
5 in the morning or 5:30 in the morning, whenever the sun comes up. And so they're illegal in the city.
wow.
Yeah, so I gave him away. I don't quite have the ending of the story that you do.
Well, thank goodness.
Yeah. All right, next headline. Al once had a pet skunk.
Oh, no, that's going too far. But yes, I did.
Oh, you did? A pet skunk?
My dad belonged to the Lions Club. He was a real, what do you call it? Real guy that did good in the community. He set a good example for everybody. He just wanted to make the world a better place, it seemed. But anyway, they had an exchange program with other Lions clubs around the world.
Yeah.
Manitoba used to be populated by bison or buffalo before the Europeans came. So Manitoba is known for buffalo, or was, until they were decimated. What a horror story that was. But the bison or buffalo is the symbol for Manitoba. So Manitoba was going to present, I don't know where, some other, maybe Bemidji, Minnesota, some Lions Club they were going to exchange animals. They were going to give them a buffalo, like just a bronze buffalo, just like a hood ornament or a desk mount or something. Whatever other Lions Club, they decided they were going to give a skunk. Getting the skunk across the border was more involved, so they sent it a month or two ahead of time. So the skunk came ahead of time, and Dad had it in our garage. It was our pet skunk for 2 months.
Wait, was this skunk de-scented? Is that what they call it?
Yeah, it was de-scented, friendly as a pussycat. Well, there's different pussycats, but super friendly. You could pet it, and it did have a slight musky smell, but nothing horrific. But Mom wouldn't allow it in the house after the chicken.
Yeah. Be having burritos one night and all of a sudden have that smell and go, wait a minute, hold on, is this a regular burrito?
So the skunk was our pet, and we'd go out and feed it every day. And it came time for the handing over ceremony, and my sister Liz and I were so attached to the skunk that we went to the ceremony. And it happened that my uncle Russ was in town. He lived out of town, but it happened he was back in town. So Dad had a drapery suit, a suit made for my Uncle Russ, made out of drapery. Looked like a pair of curtains. And he wore a top hat, and they presented this skunk. No, maybe Manitoba presented it to Bemidji, Minnesota. Maybe that was it.
Oh.
I have no idea anymore.
I don't either.
But yeah, the skunk survived.
The skunk lived.
Skunk soup is not popular anymore. So yeah.
I don't think I've ever had that. No.
No.
All right, next headline. Al was the lead French horn player in the Calgary Philharmonic Orchestra.
Well, I play brass instruments, and I've enjoyed playing them. I started playing when my dad collected musical instruments, so I started playing the trumpet at the age of 13, and I got better and better at it. But I never played with Calgary. I never learned to read music. That one is untrue.
When you play everything by sound, or by, how does that work?
Yeah, I don't read music. I have a terrible ear, but it's just from listening to something over and over. If I want to learn a song, I have to listen over and over and over and over and over again, and then I try it out, and people will correct me. I've got a couple of granddaughters who can sing anything they hear. They can sing it perfectly first time. My son can do that too, but I'm hopeless. I guess that's why I turned to comedy.
Right.
If I got a crazy hat on, it doesn't matter how I'm singing.
That's true, or how you're playing, huh?
Yeah.
All right, last one. Al built an exploding toilet.
Why would anybody want one of those? For use on stage, of course. Yes. That's the first prop that I built. A fellow that I worked with was quite an eccentric. He had perfect pitch. He could hear a cow mooing in the field, and he would say that cow modulated from an E flat to a B. Anyway, he was amazing, and he built his own Leslie speaker, which is like for a keyboard and organ. It twirls, and it's the famous sound when you hear blues organ playing, B3 organ, this twirling speaker. It's called a Leslie, and he built his own using a record player, a bicycle brake cable, a stadium horn, and a cottage cheese container.
Okay.
It's hard to describe what it did, but the speaker feeds down into the cottage cheese container, which is twirling on the record player, and the sound comes out the stadium horn, and it sounded better than any Leslie speaker you could buy in a store.
Wow.
I was so impressed that he made it out of just stuff, and he balanced it on there. It was all chewing gum to make sure it wasn't wobbly. Anyway, when I saw that, I thought, that's something I can do. So I built this box that had horns and buzzers and sirens so that I could sing, roll out the barrel, ooga, we'll have a barrel of fun, toot, bonk, ding, like that. At the end, I decided to have a toilet seat on top where the lid would open and 2 flags would come out and wave, and then I replaced the flags with a hand that would come out and wave. The toilet seat would open, and then I'd push a button. I found a way to ignite black powder, gunpowder, with a toaster wire from a nichrome wire from a toaster. If you plug it into the wall, like into a wall socket, it'll turn red, like red hot.
Yeah.
Boom, up it goes. So I built that thing and used it on stage, blast off a little bit of gunpowder. It'd come out like a mushroom cloud. It was spectacular ending to a show. We were in Portage-la-Prairie in Manitoba, playing across the street from one of the main bars, where all the big acts played across the street. And it was a Monday night, and I thought if we do a really good show, we'll get everybody to come over and see this comedy band. So I put in a double charge into the thing, thinking that would be funnier. Like if a teaspoon of black powder is funny, a tablespoonful will be hilarious.
Oh no.
Oh my God. So it opened up, I pushed the button, and the band is playing a diminished chord, an anticipation, blah, 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 what's going to happen now? And I pushed the button and nothing happened. I push it again, nothing. And the whole audience, they're all standing. The band is looking. It's almost dead silent in the place because everybody's thinking something's
happening.
Is supposed to happen. What's going on? At the bar, everything's quiet. Pushing the button, nothing. I'm thinking, oh no, I'm so embarrassed. This is horrible. And so I looked in, and it was like a Wile E. Coyote comic, like a cartoon. I looked in, and I saw the toaster element wire turn red, and I saw it soon enough to turn my head 1 millimeter to the right. That's all I could do, and the thing went whoop in my face. I looked up, and one eyebrow was burned off. My eyelids are singed together, and my hair, smoke is coming off my hair. And the crowd went berserk.
They're like, wow, that was amazing.
The drummer did a massive drum smash solo to add to it. The crowd went wild, and I just lifted my hands up in triumph and walked off the stage blind into the bathroom. I knew where it was, right next to the stage. I went right in there and splashed my face with cold water for about 5 minutes and survived. No damage, no eyebrow, but no serious damage. My hair singed on one side. But anyway, we packed the place from then on.
Oh, I'm sure after a big finale like that.
Oh man, yeah. So that exploding toilet seat went up in the fire. So I won't be doing that again. That's a little side bonus for the world.
That was fact. Or something John just made up.
Well, thanks for doing my show. That was a lot of fun. Do you have any social media or anything else you'd like to promote?
Well, pretty well everything is Al Simmons Entertainer on TikTok and Facebook and Instagram, all of that stuff. Al Simmons Entertainer.
Perfect. And thanks to all my variety artists. Tell all your friends about the Variety Artist Podcast. Thanks again. Oh! Al's playing us out. Thanks again, Al, for hanging out. Now go out and book those gigs, make some money, and have some fun. Here's a little reminder, rate and review this podcast. Thanks.